record to the cloud. Go to share my desktop. And we're going to start. Okay, cool. Half of y'all know me, so sorry that you have to hear this again, but there's this thing, it's called Pecha Kucha. I don't actually know what culture it comes from. I don't remember, but it's basically like introduce yourself in 60 seconds and that's it. So this is kind of my Pecha Kucha that I always do. Personal and professional background about me. So most important thing in my life is my sister, Allie. She is, has a much better haircut these days, but is just as adorable. She actually is coming to visit. I haven't seen her in 4 months, in a couple hours. So very excited about that. Personally, I've always kind of had a wandering spirit. I get really sick of living in the same place for too long. And so I consider myself kind of a nomad. I don't like to own many belongings and I can't wait for COVID to be over. I feel super lucky that I found my way into product management. I've been doing it basically for the last 10 years. And at a variety of companies, I started really big and have gradually gotten smaller and smaller. And I've kind of found my niche. Currently, I'm at my third startup where I was the first product person, starting to build out our team. And I love the early stage, but I learned a lot from the big stage and have, a lot of tricks of how to try to influence the organization into thinking about product development the way we all want the organization to. 2020, I guess, I just shared this because I think it opened my eyes to, the struggles of mixing your personal self with your professional self. I'm actually currently in my second year of treatment for leukemia. I found out right at the end of 2019. And so for, future topics or just one-on-one, if anyone is struggling with kind of long-term illness and trying to figure out how to have somewhat normal professional life while you do, it's something I'm super open about, happy to talk about. And the last thing I just like to share about myself is that I'm just super motivated by challenge. I'm very stubborn and competitive by nature. And so anything new is kind of what I gravitate towards. I also love pigs. That's why this one's up here. I forgot that's there. The reason I started doing these kind of workshops is because I feel like product's getting super hot. Everyone wants to, learn about the fields, but the content I so often read is really just general principles. You should have metrics and you should talk to users, but it's often lacking real tangible advice and like people truly talking about the troubles of product. And so that's what this is for. This is for like people who really want to do product right. It's not for people who are trying to do product just because they want control and they want to be the CEO of the product. It's people who love the craft, love iterating, love solving problems, and just like the continuous puzzle nature of product. And what I try to focus on is really all parts of the product development process, product discovery, user validation, data analytics, team stuff, leadership stuff, building things, really anything. I'm happy to talk about and would love to hear, ideas that y'all have. And the last thing I'll say before I get into the topic for today, which is focusing on how to work with the people in your organization outside of product and engineering and design, is kind of how I like to approach what I talk about here. I really believe that product is all about kind of the process and the product mindset over how you specifically choose to do it. So, a lot of people post articles like, what road mapping tool should I use? Or, what project management tool should you use? And yes, there are some tools that are better than others, but I think people are asking the wrong questions. They should be asking, how do I build a roadmap? Like, how do I decide what to prioritize? I don't care what ticketing, like what roadmap tool you use, put it in a Google Doc for all I care. I guarantee you the content in it is more important and you're spending all your time trying to pick the right tool when really you should be spending your time trying to pick what goes on your roadmap. And so I really try to focus on that here. I always try to, the primary content is all about examples. I think that's the best way to learn, but please don't take my examples as me saying, this is exactly how you should do it. It's really just inspiration, tangible examples for you to then get ideas of how to apply it in your organization. Every organization is different. Every product's different. Every product manager is different. So just use them as jumping off points and make them better from what I say. And then my last rule is, we all sometimes can get really tied up in what we're doing and take ourselves too damn seriously. And so mangoes is my kind of like my safe word, where anytime I'm over stressing about some decision or trying to get something right, I remind myself, just stop taking yourself so seriously, have a little fun with it, and don't put so much pressure on yourself. And so just a reminder, I love product. We're all doing important work, but also at the end of the day, there's other things that are important. And, some people are curing cancer, but most of us probably aren't. And so it's okay if you make mistakes from time to time and just cut yourself a little slack. We introduce ourselves in a more fun way this time. So I'll just get into the content. And also, so y'all know, I'm happy to stop, be interrupted throughout it. So if you have questions as we're going, feel free to come off mute and ask them. If it's getting too long, I might start saving them to the end, but I'm happy to start off having kind of more of a conversation. I can't really read the chat though. So if someone posts something in chat, if other people could call it out and let me know, that would be great. So the whole topic for today is how can you involve your stakeholders in the kind of brainstorming, ideation, product challenge and problem solving process. And we all call them stakeholders. I try not to call them stakeholders because I think it's like a super distancing word. It makes it feel like you're my stakeholders and we're the product team and we serve you. And that's not how you should think about product. You should think about product as solving problems, building products that real people want to use, that works within your business model and the constraints that your stakeholders can help you identify, but you're not serving your stakeholders. Your stakeholders are part of your larger team, and together you are all serving your customers and your users. And so I think about them not as stakeholders, but as, part of your team, part of your organization who just aren't on the core product development team. And the reason I think it's really important to involve them in the ideation process, and I'm not talking about involving them in requirements gathering. This isn't about asking them questions, asking them what they think we should work on. This is about truly involving them in here is the problem. Let's all get together to try to figure out the multitude of solutions that we could test. And the reason I think it's really important is, number one of the biggest challenges we all have, and a lot of you alluded to this, is just the culture at the company around understanding product development. People don't understand the process. They think it is about shipping things on time. They think it is about building a roadmap 2 years in advance and just going down, checking the box as you go down the roadmap. They think it is about, serving the stakeholders. And education of the right way to do product development is a very long, slow, tedious process. And I think this is a way to help that, involving people in the process, not just telling them how it works, but showing them how it works. Second is about building actual relationships with the people across your organization, involving them and letting them see how you work and how you make decisions and how you think is a natural way to build trust and influence, rather than, leading just by command and control. It's a better way to get a larger spectrum of ideas. People have different jobs than what you do. People think about problems in a different way than you. And so it's truly the best way to make sure you're getting the best idea. And also it's fun if you actually, get better at it and, start to build a culture where people are able to let their guard down and throw out bad ideas, not just good ideas, and really collaborate together. And a reminder I want to say before I get into this is, the other reason this is important is, as a product manager, it is not our job to come up with all the ideas. It's our job to take the ideas and figure out, ways to validate them to understand how much work would this be and what potential impact would it be, and then pick the ideas that we want to, invest in. But if you think that, to prove your worth, you need to be coming up with all the ideas, and if you're only prioritizing your ideas based on your biases rather than other people, you're doing it wrong. So this is something that I think we all can work on, because it's hard not to love your own ideas. But, you know, one specific example is when I do a lot of the exercises I'm about to show you, and when I collect ideas, I purposefully don't write people's names next to them. So the following week, when I'm trying to prioritize them or pick the best ones, like I'm not accidentally picking the ones the CEO came up with, or I'm not accidentally picking the ones that my favorite engineer came up with. I need them to be unbiased, because I don't care whose idea it is. I just care that it's going to have the impact on my business that we all want it to. So I'm going to start with kind of like the most boring example and lead into, you know, more fun ones from here. But this one it's honestly been one of the most impactful ones at our company, because I think people think about how to structure product meetings kind of like in an antiquated way. So whether you have weekly meetings, meetings every other week, meetings every month, whatever it might be, most of us probably have regular product meetings, probably more regular with just our core team, with the engineers and designers. But I would hope you have some type of regular, you know, discussion, get together meeting with the larger team, your like core stakeholders, like different roles across the company. And typically, and I've always done this in the past too, they're kind of like, they follow a standard structure. You know, it's like, let's review our metrics over the last week or month. Let's review the status of things on our roadmap. Let's review what was just released, and you kind of go through it. And if you are honest with yourself and you think about it, as the PM, you probably spend the majority of the time talking, and most people are just listening. Or frankly, they're probably not listening, and they're probably replying to emails or doing other things. And so I have started restructuring my product meetings to kind of like align with 3 core things I try to do. Regular metrics, like review and release notes and things like that, things that actually probably don't need to be discussed in person, and things that people never, you know, ask questions about or have opinions about. I've started trying to format things so I share those via email, via Slack, however your company works, ahead of time. And I use our in-person time to talk about things that are actually interesting to talk about, so other people are talking and not just me. So things like more complex training on new features or sharing learnings. And honestly, the majority of the time is spent on brainstorming and solving problems. So let me show you an example of what this looks like. So on the left-hand side, this is an example of like the emails I send every Monday at the start of the week. So we, at my company, we use the OKR framework to set goals. So basically for the quarter ahead, we set the core objectives for our company. And then on the product team, what I do is I say, okay, based on our overall company objectives and key results, what are the leading indicators of the product side? Like, what are the things that we can do at a product level that if we do them right, they will help the company achieve the overall goals? And so at the beginning of every quarter, I define those metrics for the product team. And those are the metrics that I report out on a regular basis during my product meetings. I used to spend the first like 20 minutes of product meetings walking through the metrics, but again, it rarely sparked interesting discussions. So I decided to move them, instead of spending like the precious time we all have together, I send those every Monday morning to the full team. So if they do have questions, they have time to read them before our product meeting and come to the meeting with questions. But if they don't, and they just read it, then that's great. And you know what, if they don't read it, you can't control what they do. Okay, you're going to have some more active stakeholders, you're going to have less active stakeholders. I urge you to still go through the practice of preparing these metrics, because that's how I learn as a product manager. I purposefully make this manual. I could fully automate it, but I purposefully every Monday morning sit down and I pull my metrics and I put them into this report, because that's where I start doing the critical thinking. Oh crap, this metric went down. I wonder why, dig into it. This metric went up. I wonder why, dig into it. So the time is spent me learning and making better decisions on the priorities for the week, rather than, you know, trying to make it look pretty in a chart. And then on the right-hand side, this is a screenshot. I'm sorry, it's not pretty, but this is literally from the product meeting I had on Monday with our team. And so instead of spending time, you know, reviewing things that people can review on their own, I organize a bunch of brainstorming activities to do live when we're together. So for example, one of the things that so I should give some context. The product that I currently work on is it helps people plan their dream bachelor or bachelorette parties. It's called Batch. And right now we do that through a mobile app that people can use to, invite all their guests, share their travel details with each other, vote on what they want to do for the weekend, and then actually book the activities for the weekend as well. And one of the things we have, coming up is improving the profile of all the party guests. We have a very basic profile, but we want to make it more fun. We want to make it more valuable, and we want to make it help people like break the ice, because for our product, a lot of people don't actually know each other before the party, because you have different groups of friends coming together. And so it's something that we're about to start kind of like designing. And so the brainstorming activity I held on Monday was called, I always name them something nerdy. You don't have to do it, do whatever your personality is, but it was called Shout It Out. And it was basically, we put a timer for 5 minutes, and everyone had to come off mute on Zoom, and they just had to yell out any ideas that popped in their head about what we could display on the profiles. The rules were, there's no limits. Don't think about what's possible. I don't care how we're going to do it. I don't care if it's a lot of work, just yell it out. The second rule was, do not filter yourself. I don't want the best ideas. I want 100 of the worst ideas. So just yell out whatever pops into your head. Don't explain it. Don't justify it. Just say it. And so we just spent 5 minutes. Actually, people just kept on going. So we honestly probably spent 10 minutes of just people yelling out random things. Some things, make total sense, like collect people's food allergies and put on their profile so you don't plan anything when half the party is allergic to shrimp. Like, don't go to a seafood restaurant on Saturday night. But then there's some other kind of like more random ones, like alter ego names. I don't even really fully know what that means, to be honest. Something about their logistics, like not sure what that means. But the point is, we're not here to filter and vote and come up with the best ideas. We're here to create a culture of people not being afraid to share funny ideas, because that bad idea might then spark the next best idea in someone else. And so this is really training people to get into the brainstorming mindset. And so really, I guess, again, this is just an example, but kind of in this blue box is the takeaway of in-person time should be spent doing things that you cannot do alone, that people can't do on their own. That's what you should spend your in-person time together doing. And even me, I've been doing product for a long time. I'll all of a sudden catch myself where I'm like, oh crap, like I haven't changed the format of our product meeting for the last 6 months. And I think it's actually not that engaging. It's so easy to get into a routine, but it's up to you to figure out how to keep on evolving the product meeting to be interesting and to keep people's attention. No one's going to tell you, hey, that was boring. They're just not, but you need to read the room and you need to be proactive about it. Any thoughts or questions or ideas this sparked before I move on to example 2?
Sarah, quick question about this particular tactic. When you were doing this, were you like screen sharing and taking notes, or were people like record it and transcribe it later?
Good question. So I really have been wanting to get a better kind of like virtual whiteboarding tool. So that's what I want to do next time. But honestly, I was screen sharing. Everyone was, on Zoom. And so I could see people's faces, but I was screen sharing just a blank Google slide. And I was just writing these bullet points as people shouted them out. So as I said it, I was just taking notes. And I've done it differently in the past, where instead I had everyone bring a piece of paper and a pen. And so I put a timer and said for 3 minutes, just write every idea that comes to mind, and then have people share their kind of like 2 favorite ideas. I've done it that way as well. But since we've been doing that for a couple of months, I then was like, okay, people are getting better at kind of like freely brainstorming. And so then I was like, okay, now we're going to move to doing it out loud, because then it's kind of more fun and generative and collaborative. But I wouldn't have started with that probably, because it just would have been crickets. So
Sarah, I have a question, and I don't know if I'm like jumping ahead or,
That's okay.
you know.
I'll tell you if you are.
Thanks, girl. How does this work if like you already have like a backlog of like either features or like already like, you know, quote unquote, like big ticket priority items that different teams have already like, like these are big things, and, you know, just like, do you
you don't really have new things like open space like this to
exactly like, especially if you have a really like we have a really small engineering team, like it's the smallest department, so just curious like how that would work.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I'm glad you brought this up. One thing you don't want to do is kind of like always do these exercises and never have anything to show from them, right? Because then that's like leading people to disappointment. So if I did something like this every week, but then none of these ideas ever came to life because I have too long of a backlog of other stuff, you know, people are going to stop enjoying them because they're going to be like, what's the point? So definitely, like, I only do stuff like this once I'm like either fairly sure it's like, this is like upcoming on the roadmap, but I haven't fully spec'd it yet. Or if I'm doing something that I'm not sure is going to get to the roadmap and it's more like early stage, I just make that really clear, where it's like, you know, this is really early stage. This is just to generate ideas for later on. In terms of what you're saying, you know, it is kind of a bigger topic, because I would have to dig into like specifically for your company, you know, why are, you know, like, it sounds like your roadmap is a little more feature request driven than like actual like strategy driven, which is, you know, a lot of people's reality. And so that is definitely a topic worth going into in the future. But I would say one potential way to do it is, you know, pick one of those features, right? So, okay, we're specifically have gotten a request to add XYZ capability into our product. Take that, but bring it a level up. Why are they requesting that? Like, what's the problem they're trying to solve with that feature? Because I bet that feature was requested and maybe it's the right way to do it, but there's probably 10 other ways to do it as well that could solve the same problem. Maybe they'd solve it worse, maybe they'd solve it better. And so what I would do is take that challenge and bring that to a brainstorming exercise. So say, you know, right now, XYZ team is having a problem doing blank. So we're going to do a brainstorming exercise around the different ways we could potentially solve that problem. So rather than, you know, doing this, where it's like a very, you know, people understand what a profile is, it's easy to throw out ideas of what to put on it. And my stakeholders already really know like our problem space. I would turn it more into, you know, for me, for example, a feature request is like, when someone makes a booking. Right now, it's a very manual process to like confirm the booking with the vendor. So a feature request might be, we need the ability to send an email to the vendor directly from our admin tool when a booking comes in. And so what I might do in that case is say, okay, let's bring it a level up. How can we reduce the amount of time it takes to confirm a booking? That's the challenge. That's why they requested that feature. And so I would bring that here and I would say, okay, we have this big problem. It takes too long to confirm a booking request with the vendor when a booking comes in. You know, like we have all our teams here right now who understand a different part of our business. And so what we're going to do together is try to brainstorm different ways to approach this challenge. And I want totally different approaches. Okay. I want us to think outside the box. And I might even assign people ways to think about it. So, you know, these 3 people only think about, you know, how we would do it if we had to keep doing it manually, but we could do it better. Like, only think about how we would do it if we could email vendors. Only think about how we could do it if we could phone call vendors. Like, maybe I would break down different categories to make sure everyone doesn't only come back with the one obvious idea. And then I would maybe have them brainstorm, like, write down 10 crazy ways to solve this problem. I don't care if they're possible, you know, and provide an example. Like, you know, what if a vendor could read my mind when a booking comes in and I don't even need to send them an email? Like, I want crazy ideas like that. And then send them off to brainstorm ways to solve the problem that the feature request you've got is trying to solve. And then you can use those as a like, basically, maybe you still end up doing the feature request, but maybe the brainstorming exercise gives you like 3 small enhancements, like ways to improve that feature that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. If people have additional questions, I'm going to move on to the next example just because of time, but could you drop them in the chat so we remember them and maybe we can come back at the end? Thank you. All right. So example number 2 is kind of, that was an example of how you can incorporate more collaborative brainstorming into your kind of regular boring meetings that already exist. Example number 2 is how you can run separate ideation sessions. So I don't like to call things meetings because I think it has such a negative connotation, but I either call things sessions or workshops or discussions, or I'll call them stupid things like brainstorming bash or whatever it is. Like, make it clear that like this is not a meeting where you come and you passively sit and look at a slide. This is like a workshop where we're going to be talking the whole time and having fun and drawing and doing things. So 3 examples of things that we've run recently at my company. Again, you don't have to specifically do these. They might not work at your company, different culture. Like some of these things I never would have done at previous companies. Some of the things I've done at previous companies, I want to do at my current one. So don't use these as this is how you have to do it, but use these as, inspiration, jumping off point. So I have 3 examples around role playing of your users, team cleanup, and drawing exercises. So the first one on the left-hand side is all about kind of dog fooding. So if you haven't heard that term before, dog fooding is when you in your company use your own product. It came from, was it Microsoft? It came from some big company that was trying, like years ago, was trying to launch a new product and needed help like testing it, figuring out if it was going to work. And someone was like, all right, it's time for us to like eat our own food. Like we got to try what we made. And so that's where the like dog fooding term came in. And the reason I love this is, for example, our product, once again, an app to help you, plan and have like the most memorable experiences on your bachelorette party possible. A lot of us are in, well, I'm a little bit older, but like the majority of our company is kind of in their mid to late 20s and, in our target demographic. And so, we all think like, yeah, like we know our users, but I guarantee you, and a lot of my colleagues, they use our app every day, but when they're using our app, they're clicking through it mindlessly because they know where everything is. And they're really clicking through it to like test a feature, or they're clicking through it to like make sure the copy looks good, or they're clicking through it to just like get a couple of screenshots. They're not truly using it how a person who's planning their bachelorette party uses it. And so one of our collaboration sessions, I think it was in January, I have them every month and I assign a specific topic each month. So our one in January, I had everyone come. I don't tell them ahead of time what we're going to do. And I gave everyone one of our destinations. So, Mike had Nashville and Madison had Austin and someone else had Chicago. And I said, okay, for the next 10 minutes, you are going to use our app to plan if you were going to this location for your bachelor or bachelorette party. I want you to plan the perfect itinerary and do it however you would do it. Use our app to do it. And we're 10 minutes in and I was like, cool, time to share. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, I'm not done yet. I haven't figured out what we're doing for dinner on Saturday night. Like, that's how I knew they were really getting into it. And I just had everyone plan it, screenshot their itinerary, share it in Slack. And then we kind of went around and shared what we learned. And, everyone, like, it was so funny because everyone was like, I know we don't have XYZ feature, or I know we have this feature, but when I went to use it, like, it was so annoying because I had to click here and then I had to click there and then I had to go over here. And they're like, it would be so much easier if XYZ. And so people were like, people who work on the team that picks the activities that we sell in our app, it's their job. Like they every day look at our activities. They were like, I realized there were no activities I would actually book in real life. So like we need to add more party activities or more fitness activities in this city. It just totally shifts the mindset of stop thinking through the lens of you as our employee and think of, you know, I want you to plan your dream bachelorette party using our app. And so this is an example of, and I guarantee you, even if you work with high level stakeholders, like I know it can be a little nerve wracking to like ask your CEO or ask like the VP of sales to like, you know, do some like, this might sound like menial tasks, but you know, they're setting the strategy for the department. And I would guarantee you, they haven't probably been in your product in the last few weeks. And so like, if you can, in a way that's still humble and, you know, not, you know, making them feel stupid to get them to do these exercises, it's going to really help your company come up with better strategies because they're going to see like, oh, this is what my employees mean when they say this, like this experience isn't good. Like we really do need to prioritize an initiative this quarter to improve that. And so this is really, if you can find a way to get your higher level stakeholders to participate in these, it's really going to help the strategy of your company. So another example in that case is our cleanups. So this little Smurf guy or gal who's just furiously sweeping away. So we have kind of like a company culture value that was started, you know, through the product team of like, none of us are too important to do the small little things. And if one team has to like do a bunch of grunt work one week, we want to share it across the whole company. And so we use these cleanup sessions to have any team suggest, like they bring to the group something that they need to get done. So for example, one week we needed to update all of the images across all of our bookable activities. And it is kind of an annoying thing to do. Or one week I was like, I've started finding a lot of typos in our product descriptions, and that's not okay. So all we did for an hour was everyone was again assigned a city, and it was their job to read through the description of every activity and find the ones that had typos and put them into a spreadsheet. And, you know, we left that hour session with everyone feeling better, like they had just like done something immediately tangible that fixed the product. You know, we're all working so hard every day, and a lot of times it takes like 6 months to see something come to fruition. At the end of this session, we had already had a tangible impact on the user experience of our product in just 1 hour. And also, again, our CEO left being like, oh, wow, why are there so many typos in our marketplace? And, you know, of course, I'm like, I've been telling you that for a few months, but, you know, having them in there themselves, seeing it and saying, this doesn't look good, our users can't see this, you know, then changes so that we actually have now changed our process to continuously QA our products. And then the last thing I will share as another example before I break for questions or ideas here, I see chat is blowing up a little bit, is drawing. So I know people can kind of think it's a joke, but I love doing this with stakeholders. So if your company is, you know, bigger than a startup, instead of inviting most people, what I try to do is, you know, pick one person on each team who you know is like going to go along with it. Like someone you know is going to like, you know, bring the energy and like, even if you ask them to do something that they don't understand why they're doing it, they're still going to go along with it. And make sure there's one person from every team represented so you have different ideas. And there's a million sketching and drawing exercises out there, so you can Google it. One of the ones I like to do is I could just give everyone one piece of paper, fold it into quadrants, and have a different rule for each drawing. So you can come up with them on your own. So for example, maybe, you know, maybe Yanina, this is a good example for the question you asked, like take the problem space, whatever problem you're trying to solve. So, you know, we're trying to find a way to make it easier to confirm reservations with our vendors. First quadrant, I'll give everyone 5 minutes and I'm like, sketch by yourself a potential solution to this problem. Again, I don't care if it's actually possible. I don't care if it uses technology or if it doesn't use technology, just sketch anything. And then at the end of the first quadrant, I'll say, cool, turn to the person next to you, share your ideas with each other. Now in quadrant 2, maybe I say like in quadrant 2, I want you to pick one part of the idea that the person you shared with you, and now incorporate that idea into your solution. And so now people have to start melding things together. Maybe that comes up with a whole nother idea. Maybe for quadrant 3, I say, okay, you and the person you've been sharing with, now you guys sketch in quadrant 3 a solution together, like pick a third one, but you draw together, you don't draw separately. And then maybe for the 4th quadrant, I have people draw, something different. I'm like, look at your three solutions. What do they all have in common? Are they all, an mobile app? Are they all, email based? I guarantee you people aren't thinking outside the box as much as you think. So maybe quadrant 4, the constraint you put on it is it can't have any similarities to anything you drew in the first 3 quadrants. This has to be totally different. Or you could even assign things to force people to start thinking. You could say like, your solution has to be Slack based. Your solution has to be, have nothing to do with technology. We send a carrier pigeon to take a request to our vendor, like something crazy. Like yours has to be like audio based. And this is really more about getting people out of their intellectual logic thinking minds and getting just into like drawing and going with the flow. And then I just collect all the drawings afterwards. And once again, I usually don't end up going with anyone's full solution, but I certainly get ideas. And what's really interesting is you see how you start to learn how your stakeholders think, and you can use that insight in the future when you're trying to, get them on board with your vision. And you can remember like, in their drawing, they really focused on the naming of things. So like what we call things really matters. So when I show a prototype to them, I'm going to make sure I'm not putting Lorem Ipsum copy in it. I'm going to make sure I'm putting real words in it so they can understand what I'm showing them. So it's not only a way to involve them in ideation, but it's also a way to learn about what they care about. And so really the theme I'll say here of like using these things as jumping off points is, your team members and your company culture better than I do. So again, these things might not work. People might think you're crazy if you all of a sudden start making them draw. Like ease into it, invite the right people who are kind of willing to go with it. If you're more of a corporate culture, like do the whole meeting where it's like you talk to each person you invited ahead of time and you say, hey, this is going to seem kind of funny. We're going to spend an hour drawing, but I really would appreciate like if you can kind of like, be a leader with me and just go with it. Cause I promise, like I promise I have a point to it. There's a method to the madness and it's going to be valuable in the long term. And so work it within your culture and pick the exercises that are going to work best for you. We have one more example, so we're actually doing okay on time. So anyone who's dropped a question along as I've been going or has a question on their mind, I would love to, and maybe someone who hasn't already asked a question, I'd love to hear them. Is everyone just mesmerized by this Smurf like I am? And too distracted by the GIFs, whatever.
Definitely mesmerized.
No questions? I thought there would be more. Let's see if anyone said anything in chat.
I'm holding back, Sarah, but I have questions.
That's okay. Go for it.
All right. So when you're doing this kind of thing, do you involve people who are like, do you intentionally involve people who are very familiar with the project, like the designers or engineers, or do you intentionally not invite them and focus on people who are more tangential and like only kind of know the themes?
That's a really good question. I would say probably a mix. Like, I don't care which role it is, right? So maybe there's an engineer who's on a different team who I actually think, has really creative skills, like problem solving skills. And so I might bring them in and they might actually know nothing about this project. So it doesn't actually matter the role. So I would say I just try to find, I think with the whole group, I want a mix of people who are familiar with it and people who aren't. So, you know, then we can get different perspectives. I want, and, you know, if the people who aren't familiar, if they're like, you know, everyone, the problem at the beginning is people want to have, like, they want to do good. They want to get the right answer. They want, and like, they're going to ask, like, well, can you tell me this? Can you tell me that? And like, share enough so they know at least what the heck the challenge is. But I would say, don't answer all their questions. You got to kind of be like, I know you don't know, and I know it's a little stressful, but like, that's the point. I really want to see like someone who doesn't know everything, what they do. So like, I promise you, just like, trust me and go with it. But yeah, so in the group, I would say a mix of people who know the space and who don't know it as well. A mix of functions. So, you know, one engineer, one designer, one salesperson, one account manager, whatever it is. And then also a mix of personality types. So like, this is where it comes in, like, you know, your team members. So like a mix of introverts versus extroverts, or a mix of people who are more data minded and people who are more, you know, storytelling minded. Or like, maybe I invite an engineer on my team who doesn't talk as much, but like, I know she probably has great ideas in there. So I try to, yeah, be thoughtful. And then also, maybe like, if this is like a sales, maybe I'm doing one that's specifically focused on the sales team. Maybe I do only bring salespeople or something, you know, it depends on what you want to get out of it, what you're ideating around. But if I'm doing that, I make sure to have one person who's like, you know, the kind of, not like the boss, but like someone who's kind of a natural leader who like I can talk to ahead of time. And I'm like, okay, like, can you just go along with it? Because if you do it, everyone else will. So like, you know, just think of the personal dynamics too.
Thanks. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I also have just a question. Okay, so loving this idea, you know, people getting things down on paper, like think about the best way to do this, doesn't matter if it's possible, but then like, when you go back and look at everything, like, how does it work if you like with dev constraints in terms of like, maybe the technology is not, we can't do it, or we can't do it within this time frame, or like what you asked for is just so big. And I know like the idea of breaking it down, but like it's still, even once you break it down, it's just like you need to think about like scalability and, you know, not building something one-off, and just like maybe this just isn't possible with whatever like dev platform you're on. Like how talk to me about that.
Yeah, I will talk to you about that. Yeah, that's actually really good. So what I usually do from here is I don't actually then like take these ideas and say like, let me scope each one of them and see how we would do it. I kind of do the reverse process. So I kind of like put them to the side and I go through like kind of the actual requirements like on my own, right? So it's like, okay, we're trying to solve this problem. It definitely needs to be able to do these things. Again, trying not to get solution based, like how you're going to do those things, but focus on like, it needs to be able to do these things. I want it to have this outcome. These are the metrics I want it to impact. And then, you know, I know based on our roadmap and our other priorities, like I need it to be like a medium level of work, or however you know, scope and estimate things. Like you put the constraints around the problem, and then kind of like, then with your actual team who's going to like build it, like with your actual designer and your actual tech lead, or however you work, you bring more like, here's the problem, here's what we're trying to solve. Like we have enough time to do not the like hackiest solution, but we can't do the most complex, or like, let's start with like a simple one. And then like, you kind of like can brainstorm how you normally would with that smaller team. And you use like the drawings or the list of things more as like additional like inspiration. So it's like you come up, you know, you probably will say like, here's the challenge and here's what we want to solve. And the designer right away will be like, you know, oh, we should add, you know, 3 steps to the onboarding process that does X, Y, Z. Or the engineer might be like, oh, well, yeah, it's pretty easy. We like pull data from their Facebook profile to like get that information. And then like you're talking about these solutions, and like what you as the PM can then pull in and be like, let's go over some of these like ideas people had to see if like we can, if any of them just sparks a more realistic idea. So then I'd be like, oh, cool, this person drew out doing this, or this person drew out doing that. And like, I probably would never fully take one of their drawings and say like, oh, like this is a great idea, but I might take part of it. And I'm like, oh, in this example, they were like, we should email our clients and ask them this specific question. And then I might say like, oh, this is a great idea. Like that question should be one of the onboarding steps we add. So if they're not necessarily, someone is joining, they're not necessarily, full actual solutions that can be built, but they're really more, a place for you, since you know the technology, and like the engineer knows the technology and what's possible, and the designer knows what's a good user experience. It's just like a way to make sure y'all are thinking outside the box and not just coming up with the most obvious solution.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a quick question or thought. So these feel like ad hoc meetings, right? And at first I was like, oh, this is a group, you meet with them every, X period, and it's kind of like a regimented meeting. But now, hearing a bit more, it's more of you pick and choose the people that would be valuable in the conversation. So I'm wondering what your responsibility is as the product manager for how long you are courting these people, how long are you like keeping them up to date on where things went. I mean, I could see yourself becoming like a spider and having your hands in so many different things, and wondering like, when do you know how, I guess you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so this one really depends on your company size. And so like the reason I do actually have these as a regular meeting, because my company right now is only 10 employees. And so I invite everyone to this, and we do it every 4 weeks. And I know that every 4 weeks, I'm going to have something that I'm trying to like work on. So I pick the topic maybe like the week before, and we just do it every week. Whereas when I was at a company that was like, more like 150 people, I would do it kind of regularly with like I would do it ad hoc, but usually with the same group of people. It's like I have 2-ish people on each team, on sales, on content, on account management, who like are really interested in product, who like, want to think beyond their job. And so I do it ad hoc when we have a new project kicking off, but it's usually with the same people. And then when I was at, GE, that has like 100,000 employees, like that is more like ad hoc and probably different people every time, because like every project I was doing would change stakeholders. And it's just about being really clear up front, right? So it's like, are you setting the expectations that like, this is a project that this group is going to be working on for the next like 6 months together. And therefore you do want to like, make sure you follow up with like, here's what came out of our ideation, and here's the next step, and here's the next step. Or is it kind of like you're working on a project with this other team, these other people in the company are like creative thinking and would give you like a good perspective. And so you actually just say like, hey, can you do me a favor, join this meeting for an hour, and like, you can forget about it after then. Like, I'm never going to give you updates. Like you're just helping us out, so you can do it anyway. And I think, it just depends on, it's kind of like for you as the PM, what's it for? Like, are you using this to ideate? Are you using this to help your stakeholders get out of the feature request mindset and teach them about the product development process? Are you using this just to like build culture and like have people have more fun at work because like things are super stressful right now? And that will drive, do you actually have to follow up with people to show them that you're following through, or is it really more of like a one-off thing? Cool. So, okay.
Have you ever done this?
I do want to wrap.
Because just thinking from my experience, so much of the feedback and the sessions come like directly from the customer, and it is hard because you get these feature requests, so super feature request heavy, but I feel like we have had a lot of success getting them out of like what the functionality is more of like why and what is it going to get them. So I'm honestly curious. Now it also depends, because like we have like, more specific relationships, like long-term agreements. And so we probably could push them in a more creative way. I don't know if it's the same way of you having like so many, random users who are just using your app.
Yeah, I love that. So definitely now that you've mentioned it, when I worked on more B2B, like a B2B product, I did do some of this. It's a little less, you know, you have to be, it depends on the culture of your like customers, right? Like is it risky? Like if you do this, are they then going to be like, this needs to be built? Or are they the type of people who are like willing to go on the journey with you? So, but I definitely think you could do something like I wouldn't, maybe not the first 2 examples, but more like the third example of drawing, like we're about to build you a new dashboard. Like I'd love to see how you envision it. And it's less of like, get creative. And it's more of like, just draw your ideal dashboard. And like, that could be really great. And then you can ask the questions of like, why? Oh, like, why'd you put this chart here? I'm curious, your thought process. And like, that's how you get the insights. I think that's a really cool idea. And actually, I'm going to think about how maybe we could do something, you know, with a more consumer product. I don't know. I want to think about that.
I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I actually think it'd be more impactful knowing what song they like go wild on the dance floor. Like that's more of what I would ask them to do.
That's how you had to have them introduce themselves to each other.
Yep. That's my barometer. Like you're not able to stay talking to me.
I love it.
Answer the question.
It's funny. Okay, just for timing wise, I'm going to go through the last example. It is the shortest one. And actually, some people are on this call at the company where we did this. So a good throwback. And then I have 4 kind of just like rapid fire examples, and then we'll hopefully end with 5 minutes left to ask some questions. I also have time to stay a little longer if people want to, but the last example is just one type of meeting that we had at a previous company that I started when I was the first PM when we were smaller, and we kept it as long as I was there. I don't know what they did once I left. Maybe someone else on call to us, but it was, we kept doing it. Yeah. Okay, nice. And like the reason I think it worked was because like some of these things you do need to think of, like you need to have an internal marketing mindset, right? Where it's like, you're not just doing like boring product meetings. Like you want to make product like fun. You want people to be excited to like see what you're working on. You don't just want to like give boring updates that are metrics based over and over again. And also the core principle of why I think this works so well is like, you don't always need to run it as the product manager. Like put your engineers in front of people, put your designers in front of people, like stop talking so much. I have to take that advice a lot. And I have to remind myself that it doesn't always need to be about me. And also it doesn't always need to be like a 60-minute ideation session. And so I will show the example. So we used to have a thing called Ship It and Sip It. I think we did it every other Friday. It's like at the end of the week, end of the day on Fridays, we would all get together. It was totally optional. This was not required. Anyone could come when they want to. Don't need to feel bad if they couldn't come that week. And we would have the engineers hook up to the monitor, and we would have engineers demo what was shipped that week. And the engineer who worked on it was the one who demoed it. They talked through it. You know, oftentimes they're not the people who are, you know, presenting to companies. So it was great because other people across other teams like to hear from them. It was great because it was like a chance for people to directly, like maybe they saw in my release notes that we released something, but maybe they felt stupid replying and asking a question, but this was more informal. So they could ask, you know, well, why is it like this? Or how do I do that? And it was just like a lot of fun. I mean, sometimes like up to like 30 or 40 people would join because it was a Friday afternoon. We named it something fun. We didn't name it end of sprint demos because that doesn't sound fun. And we always had drinks. So maybe that's not your company culture. Maybe you like bring donuts, like do whatever you want. But I would try to always go out ahead of time and like actually buy good drinks. It wasn't just like finding whatever was left over in the kitchen. It was like actually like finding fun like cups to drink out of, or like 1 week was beer theme and 1 week was wine theme. And the sticky notes are here because I didn't do this often, but every now and then I would be like, okay, cool, Ship It and Sip It is over. Everyone take a sticky note, pass this stack around, take a sticky note, and you're not allowed out of the room. Like I'm standing at the door of the room, and like your ticket to leave the room is to, I need you to give me a sticky note, and on it, I want you to tell me like one thing that, if you're on the sales team, I want you to tell me one question that a potential customer asked you this week that was hard for you to answer. Or, you know, if you're on the design, like whatever it is, like literally give everyone a task that will take them 1 minute. And so it doesn't need to be a 60-minute ideating session, but it's like 1 minute, people leave, and I'm all of a sudden left with like 50 sticky notes that can generate a million ideas in my mind. So it doesn't need to be some big fancy drawing session. It can just be like, oh, it's the end of like a regular like weekly kickoff meeting for the company. Like everyone on this whiteboard on your way out, like add to the list like one random idea that we could do with our product that you have always had on your mind, but you've never shared, you know, whatever it may be. And I think the last thing I'll say about this is don't be afraid to actually like be the person who sets these new company culture traditions at your company. Like Ship It and Sip It was something that like became, I feel like, part of like a thing people looked forward to. And it was a good example to use, like when people ask like, what's your company like? What's it like working there? Do I want to join your engineering team? Like this was a great example to say like, this is something we do. And we can start creating new traditions through this way. And to wrap up, before we have 5-10 minutes to talk about it, ask questions, things like that, is a lightning round. So those were kind of 3 bigger ideas. These are 4 smaller ones that I'm not going to ramble about each one, but just throw it out there so you can think about how to do this kind of, these are less brainstorming ideas, and these are more kind of company culture ideas to lay a foundation of constant ideation and constant creativity, rather than like, you only need to be creative every other Monday from 3 to 4 when we talk about product. So 1, I always have it so anyone across the company can sit in on user interviews. I always facilitate them, and I don't like to have more than 2 people in on them, but I have a public calendar where anyone can see the times that we have them coming up for the week, and they can sign themselves up. People on the sales team, people on the account management team, they can just do one and never do it again. But that way they can like be part of the process, get to know our users, and you know, it gets them kind of like excited to be more participatory in our future product road mapping discussions. Second lightning round idea. At multiple companies I've done it through Slack. You can do it through other, whatever tool you use at your company, but stream in kind of like public release notes when you ship a new feature. So, you know, don't wait till the end of, you know, your sprint to say, here's everything we shipped. Like as soon as you're changing things, or maybe you don't do releases that often, but maybe you can share something else that would generate ideas. I always share them publicly to like everyone, because as soon as I share a screenshot of a new thing we released, that might, you know, someone might ask a question on it that I never would have thought of. And that question, you know, I say, no, you know, we didn't add that capability this time, but that's actually a great idea. Maybe we should add it next time. And it just gives a more natural place for people to ask questions, rather than in your live product meeting each week, where they kind of might be more introverted and they don't want to ask it when there's like 10 people in a room. Another thing, again, I do it in Slack. I don't care how you do it. Maybe you do it via email, maybe you do it in person. But my current company, we have 2 channels that everyone who joins the company is automatically added to. One is called Half Baked. This is what I named it to kind of make sure people don't feel like they need to have fully fleshed out, fully thought out ideas before they share them. You can share your half-baked ideas before you even know how it would work. And so anyone can drop things in here where it's like, the customer support team just got this email from the customer support team asking if we have this feature. Don't know how we would do it, but sharing it. Or, you know, just was using this app, here's a screenshot of something they do. You know, it's promoting half-baked ideas that then give me a lot of ideas. And there's no assumption that these are things we have to do. These are not feature requests. These are just random ideas that you can take or you cannot take. And again, what I learned, this is more building a hypothesis-driven culture. So this is where anyone can share something throughout the week of something they learned. So, you know, someone's, you know, someone on the sales team is doing a random like analysis of how many customers they were able to, you know, get to sign over the last month. And they realize like, oh, this month I signed way more companies in this industry than I ever have before. they just share that, like, oh, I learned that, these companies seem to be more interested in our product than they used to be. Maybe that's not interesting to you, but maybe it actually gives you an idea of a potential new market to move into from the product side. Again, none of these are feature requests. It's just a place for people to start thinking, oh, we should try to be looking for insights. And it starts a lot of discussions because other people will then comment on it like, oh, that's cool. Like, here's another question I have. Here's another question what if we could do this? And then that can feed Half-Baked. Last idea, we're not in physical offices anymore, so this is a little harder to do, but I do try to put physical things up to kind of like remind people. So for example, maybe there's a sticky note wall of like, you have a wall and it's just an ideal wall and you have a bunch of stickies like on a table by it. And anytime someone walks by it, they can just like jot an idea down, put it up there. Like, how can you make this fun? Like, how can you make it more physical and tangible and like do it? Maybe there's ways to do it digitally too. I can't think of one right now, but it doesn't have to be so corporate and in like a meeting time and like in a Google Doc. Like, how can you kind of make it more tangible and tactile and in your face reminder of, how we can be creative all the time. I would love, I don't need to talk through this. You can read it yourself. This is kind of a summary of some of the principles that I think work to be more collaborative with your stakeholders. And I think the overall theme is like, try new stuff. It's not all going to work. You might have an awkward session one time and you're like, well, I'm not going to try that exercise again. But, if you're building real relationships with your stakeholders, if they trust you, try out new things. You never know what's going to work, what's not going to work. I created other Slack rooms before I got onto the 2 that worked for my company that were just silent all the time. And so I deleted those and tried something new. And it's kind of like, you think of your product as an iteration process. You should think about your internal product processes and your product team as like, it's another type of product and it's something that you iterate on. And you want to have that mindset of some things are going to work, some things aren't, but don't let that stop you. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone's faces again.
One thing that made me think about something that HubSpot does that probably would be best for bigger companies. It was that ship it and sip it. So I think that definitely feels more of like that startup feel and getting everyone on board. We, as a bigger company, I think we might be closer to 5,000 employees now. So we've definitely grown, but we've got something called a science fair, and it's every month. And this science fair has become like a production. There's like themes and costumes and everyone
costumes.
Like there was a magician theme for the reporting group and everything followed on brand for it, but it gets everyone so pumped up. Think like Apple, the way they do the showcases, and it's basically the Dog and Pony Show for product, and it's like your product group would go and like have all of the new features, but it would be wrapped into a story, and it just has everyone leaving and being like, wowed, but what's great is from all different parts of HubSpot, there's different things that we can take with it. Like for me on the services end, like I know what's coming out and I know how it's being thought of, but it also like puts the product manager's name to the project. So for me, it's like one of the reasons why I got so excited about being a potential product manager is just like the role that you get to play. And there are more people than just PMs doing it though. There's designers, there's engineers, there's people that have never spoken in front of the company before. And when we were in office, it was in our like main presentation room and they had a bunch of food. So they definitely like drew people in by getting them to like eat stuff. But now it's all over Zoom and it's still like really great. And they've started to incorporate customer interviews. It just become this like really crazy thing. But the science fair is kind of like this like Dog and Pony Show or demo show that the whole company can be a part of. And I could see that being a hit at bigger companies too.
Who organizes it? Like what team is
Product.
responsible?
I would say the product organization does.
Yeah.
And each month there is a specific part of the product. So like last month was our conversation intelligence. It's basically just recording and transcription for our sales and service section. And so it's everything about how do you use to train sales reps? How do services use it to follow up on a support ticket? So it's like following a story, but it's really focused on a product group. And like one was reporting, but it's definitely a more specific theme. And it seems pretty well put together. Like there's decks and there's like coordination and handoff. And now they've done, it's just each time it gets better and better. And to kind of spice up the interaction, they create a Slack channel just for that particular science fair, and everyone dumps in.
Oh, cool.
It just gets everyone excited, and then they just like delete the channel after.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Any other stuff people actually do that might help other people, or questions or comments or anything?
Sort of a parallel to what you were just saying, Kit. I remember at the Muse we had a hackathon or hack day every quarter or two, and it was a similar idea where like anybody can work on any kind of project, but it's like the whole day, and like nobody in the company works on anything company related. They just work on whatever cool projects they want to, and some really good ideas for like actual products came out of that. And at my current company, at MedHub, we did that once. I've been there now for like 1.5 years, and it was the only time that I've seen it. And it was great. We got so many cool ideas that came out of it. And like my team is still implementing things that came out of that hackathon. And I wish that we did it more often, but it's hard to convince like, you know, the executive team to pause a day of sales and everything.
We actually, you know, of course, we're doing it. And so, but I mean, two changes to it. So one, we don't call it Hack Day, we call it Innovation Day, because one of the things I saw at the Muse was that it kind of became this like major feature request day of the dev team. Like it actually became more stressful as a product manager, because I don't know if you remember, like once we got so big, we actually started to have meetings after Hack Day where people like pitched their idea to like get on the roadmap. And like, so I just felt like I was constantly like saying no to people, and it was no longer fun. It was actually like stressful. So I now call it Innovation Days, where it's like, it doesn't need to have anything to do with dev or product. It's just like, do whatever, which that was always the case for Hack Days. But I think because it was called Hack, people always were like, whatever. And the other thing is every other one is just do whatever you want. And then every other one is actually around a theme. So one is actually, we call it Batch University, where it's like, pick something you've really been wanting to learn, a new tool, a new skill, a new topic. And rather than doing a project for a day, just spend the day learning. And then another one is like a data focused one. And it's like, there's some data analysis you've been like, if only I had the time to like really dig into this data, like, so you only do data analysis for a day or something like that. And that way it's not just like, you know, kind of the same ideas that kind of come up every 3 months. It's like spacing it out a little.
I have no idea why, but Batch University makes me think of like a Sims expansion pack, and it gets me so excited.
I love that. Well, I want to be respectful of people's time. It is exactly 1 minute past. So I'm going to stop recording now.